Hi, and welcome back to all our viewers. It's lovely to have you back with us for That Was the Week That Was, week 24 of 2023. And Vince and I are back again to review the week that was with reference to the Alternative Centre. Hi, Vince. How are you doing today?
Hi, Bob. I'm cold today and very dark. It's only about 4 days to the winter solstice, so it's just dealing with the last of the darkness now.
Yeah, it's been really cold here, which is great for us. We need some good frosts here to get the kiwi vines primed for next year's growth. But let's turn our attention to the past week and jump right into it. Trump's arrest has produced a flood of memes, but also questions about justice in a political system riddled with fraud and lies. What's your take, Vince?
I think that Trump is no more corrupt than the rest of the political system, especially in America. It seems to me like he's being targeted by Joe Biden, and I think that Hillary Clinton probably has a lot to do with it behind the scenes. She's always hated Trump, and so has the general American intelligence apparatus, which serves the globalist forces and are therefore opposed to nationalists like Trump. So I think Trump's getting targeted. I don't think he's necessarily as bad as what the mainstream media are making him out to be, but it's hard to say what the outcome is going to be because I don't know how corrupt the trial is going to be.
How do you explain the appeal of Trump and his rhetoric to millions of Americans? Do you think that they are motivated by genuine grievances or by fear and prejudice?
In my opinion, they're motivated by genuine grievances. If you look at the standard of living that working class people had in the United States, even 40 years ago, it was far, far easier for a working man to own a house and to raise a family on one wage 40 years ago than what it is now. And a lot of this loss of standard of living has been caused by globalism, because globalism has imported cheap labor and globalism has exported jobs. So globalism has made it a lot tougher for the American working classes, even if it is a lot easier for the people at the top of the system, such as the financiers and the bankers and the professional managerial class. But I think that Trump has a lot of supporters because those supporters are the nationalists who have mostly lost from the craze about globalism. So I think he's a great chance of winning this year.
The infamous Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, appears to be the latest victim of the suicide epidemic. Looking back, do you think that he had any valid points or insights about the dangers of industrial society and technology? Or was he merely a delusional and violent extremist?
Ted Kaczynski was probably both of those things. To some extent, he was a delusional and violent extremist, but his insights as to the nature of technological society, post-industrial society, and the effects that it has on human freedom are entirely accurate. In my book, Clown World Chronicles, I had 2 chapters devoted to Ted Kaczynski's insights, particularly as he'd written about them in Industrial Society and His Future, otherwise known as the Unabomber Manifesto. So I think what he wrote is a classic commentary on the state of human civilization at the moment. And I recommend everybody to read it, Industrial Society and Its Future.
Link in the description. What is the merit, Vince, of challenging the dominant paradigm and systems of our time? Is it not better to work within them and reform them?
I think if you go back 50 years, 40 years, it was probably better to work within the system because then you still had a say. But if you think about society today, there's really no way to cooperate with it. You see it with the Parliament lawn protests in Wellington. You get people get to have their say one day every 3 years, and when they vote some politicians in. And if you try and protest on any one of those other days, any one out of the other 1,050 days in every 3-year cycle, the cops come in and smash you with batons. So I think there's a lot of spiritual justice that can be found today by fighting for people's own freedoms in the face of totalitarian oppression.
Last week, it was declared that New Zealand is officially in recession. How do you evaluate the economic performance and the policies of the New Zealand government in the face of this economic manipulation by the Reserve Bank?
They've been terrified about inflation and the effects of inflation and how inflation is going to make us all poorer. But that doesn't mean that they've necessarily taken the right decisions. If you look at the state of the economy now, we've got 0% growth because we're in recession, negative growth, but inflation is still at 5%. So people are getting poorer 5% every year, and that's a lot. You only have to run at those levels for 3 or 4 years, and people are significantly poorer than what they were before. But I don't know what else the government could have done, given the fact that the Federal Reserve in the United States printed all that money. I think we were pretty much forced into a corner where we printed the same. Otherwise, our dollar would have gained too much in value. So I think we've just been riding out the worst of the economic storm, and hopefully inflation continues to come down. It's come down to 4% in America. So hopefully it'll continue to come down in New Zealand, and we can have some easier times.
Hopefully. What do you think the effect of the recession will be on the various socioeconomic sectors of the New Zealand society?
As usual, the poor and the working class are going to take it the hardest. If you own property and you're charging rent, you're probably still going to be doing really well, because people don't have any other option other than to pay their whole, or sometimes in some cases 80% of their income in rent. But the non-property owning classes, I think, are going to be hit really hard, especially by the proposed solution to the economic recession, which both Labor and National want to do, which is bring in more cheap labour, which that might benefit the corporates, but that's going to be another kick in the guts for the working man at the bottom of the heap.
Over 700 kilograms of methamphetamine were shipped to New Zealand in maple syrup bottles from Canada and were confiscated by authorities last week. Why do you think we are being targeted by these international crime syndicates?
It's simply because we smoke so much meth, and that reason mostly is we're one of the most backwards places in the Anglosphere when it comes to cannabis law reform. So people can't access cannabis easily. They go to the dealer, the cannabis dealer. The dealer says, "Oh, better weed, sorry, but I've got some meth you might want to try." And that's how so many people get hooked. That's why it's so popular in New Zealand. But the way around that really is just to legalize a recreational alternative in the form of cannabis, and make the drug testing laws less strict, so that you could have a joint on a Friday or Saturday night, and you wouldn't be declared unfit for work on the Monday morning.
Vince, methamphetamine is a very different drug to cannabis. Do you believe that both drugs should be freely available?
From an alternative centrist perspective, I've got no problem at all with the legalization of cannabis. I think that would save a lot of hassle all around. Regarding the legalization of meth, what I would do would be to introduce a license system where if a person was able to demonstrate that they were probably capable of using meth safely, then they could get a license which would entitle them to go to a pharmacy and get a certain set amount every for a set time frame. So you could use perhaps 50 milligrams per month or so, something like this. So it would arguably be legal, but it would be so heavily restricted that in principle it would be extremely difficult to get out of control. Cannabis, on the other hand, I think should be as legal as dandelions. It's a great substance. I wish I could grow more of it in my garden.
It's not only your average person who is fed up due to the avarice of the 1% in clown world. Since 2020, there have been 250 willful attacks by killer whales on the boats of the rich. Has nature had enough?
Feels like it sometimes. Nature's had enough. Nature's fighting back. You see it also with the climate records. Apparently, they're setting climate records all over India at the moment. There's a massive heat wave. I was just reading that there was one city in India that had a minimum overnight temperature of 33.4 degrees. And so you imagine during the day, it must have been an absolute hellscape. So, yeah, sometimes it feels like nature's fighting back. There's perhaps 8 billion of us on the planet, and maybe that's just too many. And it's time to Time to take some pain.
Well, I have one final question for you tonight, and this is from ChatGPT. How do the orca attacks reveal the diversity and inequality of humans in terms of their wealth, power, and privilege when some are targeted by the orcas while others are not?
Well, it's more that the rich are getting targeted by the orcas because they're the ones who have got the yachts that are moving around in the sea. The poor people are stuck in the cities just working or on the doles, so they're not really in the orca zone. So maybe the orcas are actually doing a part for doing their bit to bring down the excessively rich, bring down the 1%, and make the world a more equal place.
Good on them. Thanks for your insight and your opinion tonight, Vince. But once more, we're out of time. But what a week that was.
Yep. Cheers, Bob. It's an interesting week, all right. And we didn't even mention the Ukraine war this time. It just goes to show how much has been happening in the world this week. See you next week.
The alt centre are clown world's good guys. They don't fit into boxes neatly enough to be someone else's tools.